The first call came just after midnight. Sam Everton was half asleep in his leather chair, a glass of cheap bourbon balanced on the armrest, when the phone rattled against the oak desk. He considered ignoring it. He'd had too much to drink, lost too much at the poker table earlier that night, and the last thing he wanted was another client demanding miracles. But the name on the screen cut through the haze. Laura Addins, senior partner, mentor, friend, the woman who had saved his career more times than he cared to admit. When he answered, though, it wasn't Laura's voice he heard. It was a police sergeant from the downtown precinct. "Mr. Everton, we've got Laura Addins in custody. Picked her up in the parking garage at 11th and Main. Alone, no purse, no ID, completely disoriented." Sam sat up straight, the glass toppling onto the rug. "What the hell are you talking about? Laura doesn't lose control. Ever." That's not what it looked like tonight. By the time Sam staggered into the precinct, the bourbon sweat clinging to his shirt, Laura was sitting in a holding cell, arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes, sharp, calculating eyes that had once dismantled CEOs in court, were glassy, unfocused. "Sam," she whispered when she saw him. A single word, like a plea. He pulled strings, called in favors, leaned on the last scraps of influence he had as a former district attorney. Within 2 hours, Laura was released quietly without paperwork. No press, no scandal for now. But Sam knew this wasn't just a breakdown. Laura Addins didn't crumble without reason. Something was wrong. Something big. The next morning, Sam met her in her penthouse overlooking the city. The woman who once commanded courtrooms with icy precision now trembled as she held a coffee cup. "They were watching me," she muttered. "At the garage. At the office. I found files on my desk I never opened. Sam, I'm not crazy. David Eulis, he's behind it." Sam frowned. David Eulis was a corporate shark, the kind of client the firm usually bent over backwards to protect. Handsome, wealthy, untouchable. If Laura was naming him, it meant she'd uncovered something the rest of them were too afraid to see. "Laura," Sam said carefully, "Eulis pays his firm 7 figures a year. If you're going after him, you'd better have proof." She gripped his wrist. "That's what they don't want me to find." Over the next week, Sam dug into Eulis's files. What he found reeked of conspiracy. Shell companies funneling millions. Offshore accounts linked to government contracts. Buried arbitration cases that never saw daylight. And then the real kicker, a pattern of mental breakdowns among people who tried to investigate him. Judges, analysts, even a young paralegal who'd vanished after accusing Eulis of fraud. Laura wasn't losing her mind. She was being pushed off a cliff. Sam knew the risks. His drinking, his gambling. Everyone in the firm whispered about his weaknesses. If he went after Eulis and failed, no one would come to save him. But when he pictured Laura's empty eyes in that holding cell, he knew he couldn't walk away. The deeper he went, the darker it grew. One night, while combing through encrypted emails on a borrowed laptop, Sam's screen flickered. A single message appeared. "Walk away, Everton. This isn't your fight." His stomach clenched. Someone was inside his system, watching him. He closed the laptop, poured another bourbon, and stared out over the city lights. He had 2 choices: drown himself in the bottle, or do the one thing he'd always sworn never to do again: fight. The next morning, Sam walked into the firm's headquarters. His tie was crooked, his hands still shaking, but his eyes were clear. He demanded a meeting with the partners. He laid out everything. Eulis's shell companies, the silence investigations, the paralegal who had disappeared. The room erupted. Some partners wanted to bury it. Others wanted to run. But then Laura stood up. Her voice was steady now, the old fire burning again. "Sam's right. We either expose Eulis or we become part of his machine." For the first time in years, Sam saw respect in her eyes. Not pity, not disappointment. Respect. It gave him just enough strength to push forward. But Euless wasn't going down quietly. That night, Sam returned to his apartment to find the door ajar. Inside, his desk had been turned over, drawers emptied, files shredded. On the mirror, scrawled in red marker, "Everyone who helps you will fall." Sam stared at the message, his heart pounding. He wasn't just up against a crooked businessman. This was something larger, something systemic. And Laura had been the first casualty. Now he was next. The threats didn't stop Sam Everton. If anything, they sobered him. For the first time in years, he went a full week without bourbon. For the first time in longer, he sat at a poker table and folded every hand. He needed his mind sharp, because David Euless wasn't just a client gone bad. He was a man with enough money and power to bury anyone alive. And Sam had just climbed into the coffin. The setup, Laura returned to work, though she was different now. Wary, cautious, but determined. Together, she and Sam pieced together Euless's empire. They discovered the scheme. Euless was funneling corporate money through shell companies into political campaigns, buying influence to secure a contract for his own ventures. Anyone who stood in his way was harassed, discredited, or destroyed. Sam traced payments to psychiatrists who had signed false reports labeling whistleblowers as unstable. It wasn't coincidence that Laura had broken down in that garage. It was orchestrated. The betrayal. One night, Sam got a call from Marcus Kane, an old prosecutor buddy. "Sam, I don't know what you're digging into, but Euless has friends in high places. Federal places. If you keep this up, you won't just lose your license. You'll disappear." Sam laughed dryly. "I've been disappearing one drink at a time for years. Might as well go out swinging." But Marcus's warning hit him harder than he admitted. He began to notice shadows where none should be. Cars parked too long outside his apartment. His phone battery draining faster than it should. Then came the gut punch. One of his own colleagues leaked their investigation to Euless. By the time Sam stormed into the partner's office, the man's desk was empty, the files gone. Laura stared at him, pale. He's always one step ahead. Sam slammed his fist into the wall. Then we get 2 steps meaner. The trap. Sam turned to his oldest weapon, his reputation. Everyone knew Sam Everton was a drunk, a gambler, a washed-up prosecutor riding the firm's coattails. So he played the role. Publicly, he stumbled back into bars. Privately, he met with journalists from the Sentinel, feeding her pieces of a scheme. He let word slip that he was selling Euless's files to pay off his gambling debts. And when Euless took the bait, sending an enforcer to buy Sam's silence, Sam wore a wire. The recording was damning. Talk of payments, intimidation, even a veiled threat against Laura. Enough to bring Euless down, if Sam could survive long enough to deliver it. The confrontation. Sam arranged a meeting at the firm. Euless arrived in a tailored suit, confident, smug, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked more like bodyguards. "You think you've won, Everton?" Euless sneered. "You're a drunk with nothing to lose. People like you don't beat people like me." Sam slid a flash drive across the table. "Funny thing about drunks, we remember everything once we stop drinking." The partners watched as Sam played the recording. The room went dead silent. Even Euless's lawyers looked shaken. When the police arrived minutes later, Euless's smile had cracked. For the first time, he looked small. The aftermath. The scandal exploded across the city. Headlines screamed corruption, conspiracy, fraud. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. Judges resigned. And David Euless, the untouchable, was arraigned in federal court. Sam stood outside the courthouse, reporters swarming. He could have basked in the glory, but he didn't. Instead, he lit a cigarette and walked away, Laura by his side. "You did it," she said softly. No, Sam replied. We did it, and you kept me from drinking myself to death in the process. The redemption. Months later, Sam sat in the same leather chair in his office, but the bourbon was gone. The poker chips in his desk drawer gathered dust. Instead, a framed photo of the firm's partners hung on his wall. Laura smiling again. The team's stronger than before. He wasn't perfect. He still woke some nights with shaking hands, still heard the call of the bottle, but he had fought one battle at a time, and for once, he hadn't lost. The closing words. When a young associate asked him how he'd done it, how a broken-down drunk lawyer had taken down one of the city's most powerful men, Sam just smiled. It wasn't about winning in court, he said. It was about refusing to stay down. The world will try to write you off, to tell you you're finished. But as long as you've got one more move left, you're not done. He paused, looking out at the skyline. Everyone falls. The trick is remembering you can stand up again. And sometimes that's the only victory that matters.